understand wanting to protect your child's privacy, but
Cost of lives.
I think protecting their lives is more important.
That was some of the most emotional testimony that you will ever hear at a state capitol committee hearing. That coming from the parents of Richard Aspinwall, one of the victims in this past year's very tragic, horrific Appalachia High School shooting that took place in northern Metro Atlanta. I'm Tim Darnell, and welcome to this edition of Political Update on Atlanta News First for Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Political Update comes to you every Wednesday, bringing you all the latest headlines and news and information regarding dramatic and dynamic events that are happening in one of the state's most pivotal and important states in the world of politics, that being right here in our home state of Georgia. Our own Abby Kasuris has been watching this particular bill that has to do with creating a database of student names of students who have been engaged in activities or exhibiting behaviors that may indicate, I should say, a propensity toward carrying out an action of violence, such as a school shooting or other forms of physical confrontation. Georgia lawmakers are looking at creating such a database, and we heard a lot of emotional testimony similar to what we just heard at the top of this edition of Political Update for Wednesday, March 26th. Let's listen to Abby Kasuris' package.
If this would have been prevented, my granddaughters would still have their dad here.
Sean and Kevin Zink at a state capitol hearing in honor of their son-in-law, Richard Aspinwall, one of two teachers and two students killed at Appalachia High School, a 14-year-old student accused of killing them.
Part of what went wrong, it was a lack of sharing of information from the top down.
They're advocating for House Bill 268. It would create the school and student safety database, building a list of students deemed a threat, managed by law enforcement. In the days following the shooting, we learned police were called to investigate the teen the year before. When he transferred, the school was not notified.
For hopefully the intervention into these kids' lives, they obviously need help.
Lawmakers looking to see if a bill meant to keep students safe could cause them harm.
Kids make mistakes and then they learn better, right? That's part of growing up.
Megan Gordon with the Council of American Islamic Relations says language barriers could allow for people to target minorities.
Labeled a threat forever.
The Georgia Emergency Management Agency testified no profiling, no mass surveillance. The system would only keep data for roughly 1% of students.
I understand wanting to protect your child's privacy, but
Cost of lives.
I think protecting their lives is more important.
The bill includes a mental health component, requiring that schools hire a behavioral health coordinator and offer violence and suicide prevention classes. No vote in that committee today, the chairman indicating he would make some changes to the bill before it faces the vote in the Senate. If any changes are made, it will need another vote in the House. In Atlanta, I'm Abby Kasuris.
That was our own Abby Kasuris at the state capitol. Again, this measure is coming out of lawmakers' attempts to create a student information database of public school children enrolled in our public education system who may be exhibiting signs of withdrawal or bullying or other forms of behavior that could serve as a precursor to perhaps carrying out an act of just unthinkable violence, as what happened last year recently in Appalachia High School in northern Metro Atlanta. Education is also continuing to dominate the legislators' attentions as the final day of adjournment approaches, that being Friday, April 4th, 2025. One of the bills that made it crossover day a couple of weeks ago is a bill that would remove the exemptions from librarians who have not removed presumably arbitrarily designed or arbitrarily designated items that denote obscenity or is in otherwise objectionable or inappropriate for young children to be exposed to in public libraries. Now, and one of the so-called social issues or moral issues that seem to dominate every year's legislative session. On a more financially oriented note, we do know that the Georgia General Assembly and lawmakers have accelerated the state's income tax refund and accelerating a drop in the Georgia's overall income tax rate. Now, Governor Brian Kemp has said on the record he wants to lower Georgia's state income tax rate to 4.999% by 2029. And lawmakers, with Governor Kemp's very strong legislative team, are making that happen. And we already have, and a lot of this has been made possible by the fact that Georgia has a $66 billion surplus. So Governor Kemp obviously eyeing future higher political office and laying the Republican groundwork for possibly Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones or Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger or Attorney General Chris Carr or any of the other potential Republican candidates in 2026, laying a pretty solid economic foundation for the Republican Party to continue dominating at the governor's mansion and perhaps during every downward ballot, from governor all the way down to state school superintendent, agriculture, and insurance commissioner. Politics is always only a year or so ahead here in Georgia and elsewhere throughout the nation, which is why Georgia is one of the most dynamic political states in the nation. Another bill that has also been passed very recently by the Georgia General Assembly. It happened just yesterday, as our own Madeline Montgomery reports. A bill has passed both houses of the General Assembly, House Bill 340, that would prohibit students from using or having a cell phone while they are in class in the state's public school system. This is something that's been percolating for a number of years. Proponents say that the use of cell phones and engaging in social media is a distraction during the school day. But as you'll hear in Madeline Montgomery's report, opponents of the bill say that you're taking away a very crucial safety tool from school students who might be involved in some sort of unfortunate mass disturbance or mass casualty event that we seem to hear about with more and more frequency. Here's Madeline Montgomery.
On September 4th, 2024, Layla Contreras heard there was a shooter at her alma mater where her sister is a student.
They were using each other's phones. They were, they had access. It was on their person at the time. And, during this, incident, that was sometimes the only way we could see if they were still alive.
That was Layla's one comfort on that horrible day, which is why she's disturbed by House Bill 340 that just passed at the Georgia Capitol that bans students K through 8th grade from having cell phones in class.
Just to put them away during learning time from bell to bell, and hopefully this will have an impact and change some of the culture that we've seen in terms of social media and things happening where teachers are having to monitor phones versus actually doing their practicum and lessons during class time.
I think it's upsetting. I think students being able to have access to a communication device is so important, especially after what our community has gone through.
State Senator Jason Anavitarte argues phones could be a distraction to students if there was a shooter on campus.
I think in an event of emergency, a child should be focused on what the teacher is saying, the principal, law enforcement, public safety to get out of the classroom or protect themselves in the classroom.
Marietta City schools already have a similar rule in effect, and DeKalb County schools are testing a no-phone pilot on select campuses.
I think there are a lot of teachers, not just in Marietta, but throughout Metro Atlanta, who feel like they're losing the battle when it comes to student learning and cell phones.
Madeline Montgomery, Atlanta News First.
That was Madeline Montgomery reporting on House Bill 340 that would prohibit the use of cell phones among students while they are in class. Now, as we said, the Georgia General Assembly is heading toward its sine die, its final day of adjournment, which will be Friday, April 4th. A number of other issues that we are following here on Atlanta News First and atlantanewsfirst.com, and from our First Alert ANF Plus desk. Stacey Abrams was the target of a letter sent to the IRS this past week. Stacey Abrams founded the New Georgia Project, a voting rights group, way back in 2016 as a precursor to her almost successful 2018 Georgia governor's race against Brian Kemp, a race in which Kemp was victorious, I should say, and also precipitated another gubernatorial run in 2022 from Stacey Abrams, this time equally unsuccessful. Now, U.S. Congressman Jason Smith, who is a Republican from Missouri, and is also the chair of the U.S. House Ways and Means Committee, sent a letter this week to the IRS urging that the New Georgia Project's nonprofit fund or nonprofit status be revoked. The New Georgia Project was recently hit with a $300,000 fine for not disclosing properly the candidates and the contributions they had made to candidates, not only one of them being U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock and also former state lawmaker Stacey Abrams in her 2022 unsuccessful gubernatorial run. So the New Georgia Project is under a lot of pressure right now. The organization based here in Atlanta has already laid off more than a dozen employees, and its executive director, Francis Johnson, told Atlanta News First several weeks ago that he intends to resign. We don't know if that has happened just yet, but again, the New Georgia Project and Stacey Abrams continues to dominate headlines. And finally, in terms of tort reform, or lawsuit reform, as we like to say here on Atlanta News First, we all know that Governor Brian Kemp's lawsuit reform package passed both the House and the Senate this past week. Governor Kemp is expected to sign the measure any day now. Now, this legislation is going to make it much harder for individuals and wronged parties to sue businesses and corporate entities. This bill came as a result of the many so-called frivolous lawsuits that have been plaguing Georgia's court system for decades. And now this bill has passed. However, one of the casualties of the legislative vote came from a lawmaker named Vance Smith. He is a Republican from Pine Mountain, which is around the Columbus, Georgia area. Republican Vance Smith was one of the few GOP lawmakers to oppose Governor Kemp's tort reform package. This past weekend, State Representative Smith was informed that he had been terminated as the CEO of the Harris County, Georgia Chamber of Commerce. Harris County is from the same general geographic area that Representative Smith is on or represents. And on Tuesday, Representative Smith took to the well, and he was obviously very emotional, broke down in tears actually when he began thanking his colleagues for their support and well wishes and texts, and became openly emotional. That led to a remarkable scene that we have a photograph of on Atlanta News First, where several of his bipartisan colleagues, three Democratic state lawmakers, and also a Republican State Representative James Burchett from Waycross, came to the well and put their arms and shoulders around Representative Smith in a measure of comfort and support. Later that day, later Tuesday afternoon, Representative Burchett issued a remarkable statement that you can read on Atlanta News First and atlantanewsfirst.com. condemning the retaliations that have been leveled against lawmakers because of their support or non-support of Governor Brian Kemp's tort reform package. Representative Smith voted against the package, which was adopted, and he says that this vote cost him his position as CEO of the Harris County, Georgia Chamber of Commerce. Chambers of Commerce throughout the state obviously were very supportive of Governor Brian Kemp's tort reform package. So those are some of the headlines that we're continuing to follow here on Atlanta News First as we approach Friday, April 4th, 2025, the adjournment of this year's session of the Georgia General Assembly. We'll have continuing coverage here from our breaking news desk from now through next Friday. We encourage you to look and watch and listen to all of our podcasts from Atlanta News First, Political Update, Decatur Dish, ATL Vault, and many others on YouTube, and also wherever you download your favorite podcasts, be it Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, Pandora, or your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Tim Darnell. Thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Political Update on Atlanta News First.